So that was it. He's pointing out the dogma. If science has physics has now become dogmatic in trying to stick with what Einstein was saying, and it's trying any trick it can to do it. And one of the tricks was to define the speed of light as constant.
Okay.
And it's not in the original.
Right.
Thought.
All right. Do you think that's just an accident? Why they are teaching, let's say, a blinkered view of physics, or do you think there's reasons why they're doing it that way? Do you think they're trying to hide information about the true nature of reality? In other words,
that is a big possibility. That the people who are working in places like they're called Area 51, they know physics is completely different to what they've been taught in the mainstream.
Right.
That is a big possibility, and so they're trying to then. The Americans are trying to keep that locked in, and they don't want anybody else to know about it.
Right.
And that's a military advantage to them to do that.
Right.
And so maybe that's what they're doing. They're trying to divert the academic world to go off onto these wild goose chases, while they've got their select few of scientists who know what's really going on.
Right. And Sheldrake talks about or researches telepathy.
Yeah.
And memory, and where memory is stored. He believes that there's a morphic field, and that your long-term memories are stored outside of the brain, resonating in space.
Yeah.
Morphic resonance, he calls it. And I know that Sheldrake has had has been in contention with some people in mainstream science, and has had some successes against them in public debate.
Yeah.
But that's never put out on TV in the mainstream.
Yeah. I think when Sheldrake talks about morphic fields, then that sort of morphic resonance, and that really ties into a unified field where you've got gravity, electromagnetism. They all should be tied into a field, and so maybe what is happening from the mind is being opposed on that field as well, not just upon your body, but that is sort of outside of what they're trying to impose on us from Einstein at the moment. So it's a sort of like different physics, and it's.
So are you touching on the phenomenon of consciousness here?
Yeah. Right.
So would you care to speak about that a little bit, Roger?
I'm not really into that sort of area.
Right.
My sort of thing is sort of like, well, we've been working on Einstein for 100 years or more, and it's sort of like built on something which is wrong.
Right.
And so you need to go back earlier and then build on what was earlier than Einstein.
Right. One of the things which Nassim Haramein points out, and I find this quite amusing, is the Big Bang, and about how the expanding universe in physics textbooks, or in perhaps cosmology textbooks or astronomy textbooks, they show the expanding universe, more and more space being created over time, and they have all the mathematics for it, and they have a guy actually have it as a balloon, like it's an analogy to a balloon. The surface area of the balloon increases as it gets blown up, and there's a guy actually blowing the balloon up, and the physicists are all working on the equations for the balloon, and he says, he's at his physics conference, and he says, what about this guy here? So why haven't you got any equations representing the guy who is causing the expansion of the universe? And his point being is, if you've got a massive expansion of a universe, you must have the lungs, which is a contraction. So in other words, everything is always in equilibrium. If there's a Big Bang, there's got to be a big collapse somewhere else causing the Big Bang. Do you see what I mean? I don't know where you stand on the Big Bang theory and that kind of thing.
You've got cosmology at the moment built on Einstein's work, which is relativity and so forth, and they're trying to add quantum physics to that with people like Stephen Hawking. And then I've got people like Stephen Crothers, who's pointing out what they say in general relativity is really mathematically nonsense a lot of the time. So, but if you sort of like jettison that attempt at cosmology and go back to earlier Newtonian physics model based upon Boscovich's extended work, then his theory is about an attractive and repulsive force. And so if you've got a sort of like expansion, then it would probably, you'd be having repulsion happening as well. Eventually you would sort of like have a balance and maybe a collapse, and then maybe it gets a certain size and then it is expand again. And so it's what I think a Professor Rosler talked about as a breathing black hole. So it's a non-standard black hole.
Right.
But
I mean, there's huge controversy over black holes now with the electric universe people.
It's what you've got general relativity, and when they talk about black holes, they mean it from general relativity. But Stephen Crothers, if you need to talk to, he goes into a lot of explanation that the person who they get the mass from for black holes was Schwarzschild.
Right.
And they say this is a black hole solution, but when you go back to Schwarzschild, it's a completely different equation. So they're trying to foster on us that Schwarzschild gave us the black hole when his equation was completely different. So it's kind of like more forces put in front of us again.
Now you mentioned Stephen Hawking there, and funnily enough, I was drafting out my interview questions for Roger last night in the pub, right? And a guy comes up to me, a drunk guy, puts his arm around me and he goes, "What are you doing there, mate?" I said, "Oh, I'm just writing some notes." He says, "What's that for?" I says, "It's for an interview." He says, "Oh, a job interview." I says, "No, I'm interviewing a guy about physics and he went, "Oh, you mean the guy in the wheelchair?" Right. So people associate physics with Stephen Hawking. He's almost like a modern day Einstein. What's your opinion of Stephen Hawking, Roger? Do you have enough?
Well, he seems to be open to things, but he's still really working upon the mainstream point of view of physics, and it is massive books like that which he's sort of like building upon. He's building upon what he's been taught about relativity, and so he's building upon which from my perspective has been a fundamental mistake at the very beginning of it. And so I want to go back to earlier, but there are other people who are working on unified field theory, like this person. I got Dr. Lau, who contacted me, and he's had massive loads of papers published in science journals, astrophysics and so forth, I think. And his explanation is that Einstein made 8 major errors in relativity.
Right, and he's trying to correct them.
Well, he's corrected. He's done the experiments, and he says he's corrected it.
Right.
And he's got a unified field theory. So his point of view then is that Einstein made those mistakes, but the people who came after him made even more mistakes. So it's a massive layers of mistakes, and if you go through the papers he's citing, he's arguing with these other relativists saying they've got it wrong.
Right, relativists. Okay. Now, the unified field theory. I'm going to just throw in a philosophical point here. What all of these physicists are trying to do with this unified field theory, they're trying to describe what is reality. Right? They're not looking at why it's there, are they? They're just trying to say, well, how can I write an equation which will predict what's going to happen in the future? In other words, how is this thing functioning? It's functionality. They're describing what it does, what reality does, but with equations. They're not describing why. Why it's there, are they? Do you see where I'm coming from? Once they've got, you see, I guess you have to answer that question, what is reality, in order to then ask the question, well, why is reality there? Well, Do you see what I mean?
Well, you could work, if you work really hard, I suppose you could work out what the equations are the universe are following, but then that describes what's happening, but then you can ask yourself, why is the universe following those equations and not following some other equations? And that's all like getting really deep, and then you're getting into people saying, well, maybe the universe was designed, intelligent design, or then other people say, no, it's random, it's the universe come into existence, the only one possible, and it's all the other possibilities.
I mean, if you can get that unified field theory in one equation, some people would say, well, that it defines everything that there is. It defines God, it defines us, it defines everything in that one equation. But it still doesn't tell you whether it came out of someone's mind or it's just existed forever or why it's there.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
In the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, it says that there's a theory that whenever a person actually discovers the theory of everything, it's immediately replaced by a more complicated one.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Well, with unified field theory, you can just carry on working. You can with Boscovich, I think he does the basics of a unified field theory, and it's sort of then further work on that, and it does get more and more complicated the further you go on to it.
Right.
But you are still basically stuck with the maths describing the universe, and so why why is the universe like that? You never can know just from the maths, can you?
Right.